I didn't think you could make a living in comics because in the early 80s, I went to my first comic convention, my only comic convention until after I got out of high school. And they brought in two comic book artists. I can't remember who they were. And, all these kids in the audience are all excited to meet a real live comic book artist. And one of the kids in the audience with me asked, "Are you guys rich?" And both the artists began laughing in a way that scared the heck out of me. And they began pointing at the holes in their pants and saying, "Oh God, no!" Business classes in an art school, it is super important.
Yeah.
Even if you're a gallery artist and you think, the finest of fine arts and all that type of stuff, your main job is making contract deals with galleries and convincing millionaires and billionaires to decorate their homes with your paintings.
How did you break into the industry?
I sent in samples back when you could just mail in a pile of 10 pages of photocopies to Marvel and DC, and they would always mail you back a letter saying either you have a job or you don't have a job with us. And I got a rejection. At least I got a rejection from Marvel, which is a checklist of all the things you can do wrong on in a portfolio thing. Which almost everything was checked off. And then Neil Posner at DC also wrote back, and he essentially wrote back, "You're not good enough to get a job with DC either, but I'd like to see more samples." And that's how I broke in. I kept on sending in samples, and eventually he said, "These samples are good enough, I'd like to give you your first job with DC." I began breaking into comics before I graduated, senior year. At the time, I was also doing, I decided I might as well start doing commercial work before I graduated. So essentially I left commercial illustration, which was driving me crazy, to work in comic book commercial illustration.
Nice. How did Alan Moore find you?
It's Alan Moore anyway, so I'm going to name drop because we're already name dropping. So I'm friends with Alex Ross, we both live in the Midwest, and I told him when he was working for Rob Liefeld's Maximum Press stuff, "I'm so jealous that you're doing covers for an Alan Moore book." And he said, I'm going to do his voice as well as I can, "Why are you jealous? Why don't you just find an Alan Moore project of your own to work on?" And he's like, he's right. I just need to contact the people Alan Moore's doing work for and see if I can get a gig. So I sent in work to Maximum Press, and they loved it. And then shortly after that, it collapsed because 90s and comics. But then Alan Moore moved to Wildstorm and was starting up America's Best Comics there. So I contacted Scott Dunbier. And he knew who I was, but he said, "Alan doesn't. Can you send me some stuff I can send to Alan to see if he likes it?" And Alan did. And I got to get on the ground floor in America's Best Comics and got to do Top 10. I was fortunate that early on, after page 13 of issue 1 of Top 10, I started working with Xander Cannon to help me get everything out on deadline. Second of all, most great writers I know, if they do long scripts, will then say, "Feel free to change things if it'll help the storytelling, you'll come up with a different idea." Alan Moore's one of those people. And the last thing is Xander analyzed the script for me and pointed out, okay, everything is done in a grid system in the Alan Moore script. He describes from top left to right, if you imagine your screen as a page, he'll describe where all the heads are placed in the order they're going to talk. Then he'll put the word balloons underneath that, describe that next in the same order where the word balloons are going to appear, so they line up with the heads properly, so you don't have cross word balloon tails. And it's just all very systematic. But again, if you have a better idea, and Xander was doing layouts and he had lots of really great ideas on how to change things, he would. And Alan was always good with it. The worst thing you can have inside of a comic book script is the impossible to draw page. And because Xander is very confident that Alan Moore was doing a little rough drawing of how he wanted the page laid out. So he did his visuals first, and then he typed it up. He described the rough he'd drawn. So therefore, Alan was sure everything could work because he'd done a little rough to make sure everything could work. And then, so in theory, if you just followed the recipe, you knew it was going to work. But if you're Xander Cannon, you're a genius at storytelling, you can play around with it and come up with different ideas. And that always worked too. So I was lucky to work with two guys who were just brilliant at storytelling.